it's Reagan, and today I'm probably going to be doing one of the most requested videos I feel like I have gotten recently, and that is today I'm going to be going over my top 5 tips and tricks on how to read more. Now this is probably one of the most frequent questions I get on my channel, especially since I've started doing reading vlogs. People just ask, how can you read so much? Do you have any tips and tricks? So I figured today I'd go over what I personally do that's definitely helped me over the years to read more and fit reading more into my schedule. Again, these tips and tricks are just things that I personally find helpful, so keep that in mind. It might not work for everyone. This isn't a cure-all necessarily. And some of them might appear obvious because sometimes the most obvious solution could be the best solution. Before I dive in, I'm definitely going to be speaking how to read more in kind of 2 different perspectives. I was a student who also worked full-time as a student in college, so I could definitely speak to fitting in reading for like a college student, but I also now work a 9 to 6 job Monday through Friday and film YouTube videos on the weekend, so I've definitely gotten really good fitting reading in working as a young professional as well. So I can definitely try to cater to both of those sides, and obviously if you're not those 2 things, I think these tips will also work for you as well. So anyway, without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right into the tips. The first thing I would recommend, and the thing that I feel like has benefited me the most personally, is honestly just scheduling reading into your day. I always find when it comes to hobbies and when I'm busy or I feel overwhelmed by all the tasks I need to do, I always feel guilty about setting aside time to do a hobby that I really enjoy, and that's usually reading, but this can really apply to anything. So I found looking at my calendar and looking at my schedule, I would put blocks of time to read. And this could be when I was in college. If I had like a weird, awkward hour between classes and I didn't need to study, I would bring a book with me and I would read during that time. Or if I have now like a weird time between a meeting and when I need to cook dinner, if I have like a late meeting at home and I want to have a late dinner, I'll read between those 2 times as well. But I would say most of all, and this again will vary, I honestly say it's all about looking at your own schedule and figuring out when is the best time to fit reading in. Because when you physically like write in or set aside the time mentally, you'll feel a lot less guilty, at least I do, when you actually take the time. And you'll also realize when you kind of look at your schedule, you'll find where you have wasted time that you could replace with reading. Like for example, I found right before bed, like 45 minutes to an hour before bed, I always just be like on my computer, just like scrolling through Facebook, or on my phone, scrolling through Instagram, not really doing anything productive and just like sucking time before like, oh, I need to go to bed and like set my alarm. So now instead of like being on my phone from like 9 to 10 or 10 to 11, I try to read instead. So I've just replaced my phone perusing with reading right before bed, and it's really worked out for me personally. It's really helped me read a lot more, especially working full-time, I'll say. So scheduling it in and figuring out where you have wasted time in your schedule where you can replace with reading is definitely my first tip. Number 2 is just remove distractions when you are reading. So this kind of couples well with the first one. When you find you have a second to read, try to remove the things that prevent you from reading. So for me, I try to go to a quieter place where maybe people can't talk to me. So if I was, in between classes, I try to find a library or like a secluded spot on campus where there wasn't a lot of traffic and maybe I wouldn't run into a friend who would start talking to me so I could just read. Nowadays, it's like secluding myself in the bedroom while Clay's like playing video games in the living room so I don't feel distracted by his video game-ness. But also I find, aside from people being a distraction, again, I find my phone to be a huge distraction. 2 things you can do with this if you're at home. Maybe leave your phone in the other room. That's something I do, so I can't even like just pick it up and like look at it, or if I get a ping from a text message, I can't pick it up and read it or respond. Or there's a lot of apps where you can like basically lock your social media apps for a certain amount of time. So if you have like a quick 45-minute block to read or do something, you can use these apps to be like, can't access Twitter and Instagram, my biggest time sucks, for set amount of time. So you can still like use your phone if you need to like call someone last minute. But I definitely find removing distractions for when you actually do have the time is key to having the most productive reading time. Tip 3, I would say, is setting short reading and long-term reading goals. Again, this is gonna vary from personality to personality, but I personally am a very like goal and achievement minded person. Like, I love making to-do lists. I love setting fun goals for myself that I know are achievable, or maybe not, and it's just fun to kind of work towards them, to like cross things off my list. I personally find it very, very satisfying. So because of this, I love to set short and long-term reading goals. So long-term reading goals for me are like yearly book amount goals. Like this year, my goal is 72 books, which I probably will not hit, but I think it's fun to set one. And it also kind of keeps you honest, because you're like, oh, I only read 3 books this month. I should probably try to read a little more next month, so maybe I'll try to set some more time on my calendar to read. I also love to make like yearly TBRs, because I think that's really fun, because again, I love making lists. I actually find the most helpful is going into weekends, which is where most of my free time lives and where most of my reading happens, is on the weekends, but again, the day can vary depending on what your schedule is. I will make a short-term, like 2-day reading goal plan. And I often do this in my reading vlogs, which I do on my YouTube channel now, but I'll be like, okay, I'm going into the weekend, I really wanna finish this book and read half of this book. And it's very doable goals, and it makes me really focus going into the weekend, and I find that my reading has gotten a lot better because of it, because I feel like I'm like, not only reading and enjoying the book I'm reading, and that's the point, but I'm also like, trying to successfully finish my goal for the weekend, which feels good on like another level for my own personal personality. But I have also found a lot of success with setting short and long-term reading goals. My tip number 4 is avoid reading slumps. And obviously people avoid reading slumps in a myriad of different ways, and maybe this could be a whole nother video, but I would say my number 1 way of avoiding reading slumps is I immediately pick up a book after finishing a book. Over the years as a reader, I always find that once I finish an amazing book, if I don't immediately pick something else up, I just fall into this hole of like sadness where I just can only think about that book. I only want to like lay there and just think about it for hours, and I just never want to read again because I'm just stuck in this other world, which is fine. Like, I think digesting a book is great, but for me personally, I found if I pick up another book after I've digested the previous book I read, at least for like an hour, and just read the first chapter and then put it down, like, I'm good. Like, I can keep reading, I won't fall into a reading slump, I won't have like 3 months between finishing and starting another book. And usually when I finish an amazing book that I feel like might give me a reading slump, I immediately pick up a book of a countering genre. So I'm not just reading something and comparing it to what I just read, because I also feel like that makes it harder for me to read. So definitely try to avoid reading slumps, and for me, I do this by immediately picking up another book and trying to find a book of a different genre so I don't just like compare and contrast. Tip number 5 is accountability. And I know this sounds weird, but I feel like this definitely exists in like the workout world too. So I feel like it can be completely existing for reading. For me, I share all my reading on the internet, so I get comments every day like, oh, have you read this yet? Or are you reading right now? And I'm like, no, but I should be. And then I feel really focused to go start or like get back to it. And I feel like accountability for reading can exist too if this is something that you're interested in. And accountability can exist in a bazillion different ways. I think joining a book club is one form of accountability. You're reading with other people and you have maybe bi-weekly or monthly meetings, which requires you to read before going to those meetings, which is a form of accountability because you don't want to show up and haven't read the book. So I feel like joining a book club is a really great way. Another really great way to have a bit of accountability on your reading is buddy reading, and this can exist in 2 ways. You could read with a friend and read the exact same book and read it at the same pace, or just have like a specific end date where you both want to be finished to discuss. That's one really great way to kind of keep you on track with reading. Or 2, you can buddy read like in the literal sense of maybe going to a coffee shop on a Saturday with your friend and you're both sitting there reading different things but like existing in the same space. I found this to be helpful both with reading and with studying, because I'd be like, oh, she's studying, don't get on your phone, keep studying, Reagan. And I feel like it can apply to reading as well. Another way that I personally like to be like, I'm reading, is I'll like Instagram story, they're like, I'm about to pick up this book. And then I'm like, well, I just told people that I'm about to pick up this book, so like, don't get on Twitter, Reagan, read, you know, some chapters tonight, because then you would otherwise be a liar. But essentially what I mean by accountability is if you're wanting to read more, if you're wanting to increase your reading, if you feel like you're not reading enough and you want to read more, I feel like adding little checks of accountability along the way can really help motivate you to pick up a book, and that can be found in a myriad of different ways for accountability. Your accountability could be a sheet on your wall where you're checking off the books that you want to read for the year. It could be buddy reading like I mentioned, or joining a book club, or sharing your reading online, which is definitely my main form of accountability. But depending on what works best for you, you can definitely find like accountability checks in lots of different ways, as I've mentioned. So that's another really good way to read a little bit more. Alrighty guys, those are my top 5 tricks and tips to read more books. Keep in mind that like, you don't need to read more books, but I feel like if you clicked this video, you're interested in maybe figuring out ways to improve your reading and read a bit more yourself. Obviously, there are people out there that read way more than me, which is awesome. And there's people out there that read way less than me and they're totally satisfied, which is also awesome. So keep in mind that these tips and tricks can be applied different ways, but like if you don't want to use them, you don't have to use them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I'll see you guys soon with another video soon. Goodbye.